We're back with Season 9, Episode 11, Student Counsel. This is the episode in which we really get our first insight into Starlight's new job as student counselor, and she doesn't know how to manage her life. Which is funny, because I could talk about this, but the episode doesn't, so maybe I actually won't. I don't know. Anyways. Right at the beginning, Starlight has a frickin' beeper. I love how Trixie's reaction immediately gets across just how common this is. That this is something that she is so used to that she's just like, yeah, okay. When you're done. And of course, Starlight can teleport, so she can just kind of go back and forth, and she's just sipping the tea. As this is a great scene, it does some great establishment, it gets across a lot of wonderful visual storytelling stuff. This is a great cold open. But actually, I also have to admit how absolutely cool this idea is. Anybody who knows me knows that one of the things I love when it comes to fiction is when they use magic for completely mundane, everyday uses, usually in creative ways. Like, for example, a bracelet that beeps every time there's a knock on a door. We actually see in later things that the bracelet literally beeps in time to the knock. So if you were to do knock, 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 it would go beep, beep, beep in the same manner. That is such a cool system. And yeah, it does seem like a spell that Starlight just kind of thought up. Or probably more accurately, remixed, since remixing existing spells is kind of her thing. So, you know, doing this is nevertheless the kind of thing that I can absolutely see her researching. And that's just super cool, and I love it. Now, people in chat were already making this joke, and I imagine you're about expecting me to say, look, Starlight is once again me, because she's the character that's most like me in this show. But the truth is, this is not like me. I know what you're thinking, but Lore, you're a workaholic. First of all, no, I'm not. Second of all, the problem, as absolutely weird as this is going to sound, is not that Starlight is working too much. That is not the issue. That is bypassing the real issue here. The real issue is that she is focusing too much on one thing to the point where she is losing focus and attention and time on everything else. She is not scheduling properly. She is not managing properly, and she is not prioritizing properly. That's what's happening here. Yeah, I am actually quite judicious with my time. And for the record, one of the reasons that I never stream on Mondays is because that is family time. That is allocated and locked in hard titanium that's not moving. Even now, when I'm trying to actually focus on streaming a little bit more than usual, temporarily, in order to try and push through the queue faster, that Monday is not moving. Because that's an allocation. That is a promise. And that's the point, really. I hate to sound like the boring manager personnel type that I am, but actually having legitimately good time management is an extraordinarily important skill. Not just for running a galactic empire like I do, but for just something like an everyday thing like your job, your friends, and your life. I know that I've actually given this piece of advice several times, that you should probably manage your life a little bit more with regards to time management. And I mean that. You don't have to go as far as I do. I usually think of things in terms of blocks. The way I like to explain it is think about a Lego, right? This Lego is a unit of time. Now, what unit of time you use is up to you. I use units of times of 1 hour. So, I've got this many Legos here, and then I've got this many Legos across the day. On this day, these Legos go here, these Legos go here, these here, these here, these here, and that all forms the pattern that is my schedule for that day. And it all just fits in my head. It all just kind of works right there. But that, you don't have to go that far, is what I'm trying to say. But having some kind of awareness of management, of schedule, of allocation, and yes, I do actually allocate sleep. Although that's a little bit different. Allocating sleep is actually something everyone should do, and I mean that with total sincerity. And you're probably thinking, Laura, you just said everyone shouldn't be as regimental as you. The human body, and as a direct consequence, the human mind, is a patterned beast. The more patterned you are in your operation, the better it functions. This is not speculation or presumption, this is biological fact. So, this should be your sleep time, period. It may bend a little bit, you may not be able to sleep during a period of time or whatever, but you should be laying down in your bed, not on your phone, not on your video game, your Switch, not watching TV, in bed, resting during this period of time, because your body needs those patterns. Same thing with eating, actually. There's a period here when you eat. Well, I eat 3 times a day. So, I don't know how to do 3. We'll do it this way. There we go. So there's a range of period of time where I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I make sure it's always the same time every day. And again, that's healthy. So, when it comes to those kind of biological things, yes, you absolutely should have allocation for those kind of basic needs. Anyways, moving on. So, see, that's terrible, Raskor. I'm just kidding. I don't actually know if that's terrible. I don't have the ability to scan reality and say, bzz. At least not yet. I love the geode on her desk, by the way. Did you catch that? I'm pretty sure it's been there before. It really came to my attention this time. I also absolutely love Starlight's expressions while people are like, hey. As she's slowly like, you remember you agreed to do this and this for this while we do this. And as she's just saying, the Starlight's expressions are just getting worse and worse and worse. And this is, again, getting back to my original point. Yeah, kudos to the animation. Sorry, I'm still quite tired. It's okay. It's not because I'm sleepy. It's because I'm sick. I'm having trouble today, let me tell you. Flower sticks. Did you know flower sticks are a real thing? Can anyone tell me what flower sticks are without Googling it? Without Googling it. So I have a bit of a montage. Yep, it's what you put into a flower thing so that they grow in a certain pattern. Exactly right. Now, ironically, I did decide to Google this because I wanted to be sure about that. It turns out flower sticks can actually refer to 2 other completely unique things. The first is obvious, fake flowers. It's just a parlance for fake flowers. You know, when you get like silk flowers, you know? Those can be called flower sticks. There's also something else, which is, it's specifically a juggling thing for like parades or carnivals or whatever. And it's basically just a baton that is stylized to look like a flower, and that is also a flower stick, apparently. Go figure. Anyways. Oh yeah, Savacom's not going to like my thoughts when we get to Mudbriar, but we'll get there in a minute. So, we have a bit of a montage. Lots of neat stuff, fleshing out several of the students and several problems they're having. You know, Ocellus is having some identity issues. That makes sense. She's a changeling, you know. And Silverstream is... Silverstream is, well, a crying boy. And I'll explain that later. So then, these shelves, they're kind of bendy, yeah. She goes up, she's like, hey, what's going on? Yeah, Trixie came by to do the cake. Oh, right. The great and powerful Trixie keeps her promises, but the distracted and tired Starlight does not, obviously. Oh, by the way, your hoof is blinking. And she teleports there, and hey, there's Trixie. And then Silverstream comes in looking for help. And what's funny is what Starlight does is the right call. Now, I'm probably actually going to get some flack for this, but I stand by that statement firmly. One of the things that actually works, one of the things that is unfortunate reality of being a manager, of being a leader, or being in charge of anything, is when you have to know when to draw the line. Now, Starlight's not quite a manager, but it's the same kind of problem. You have to know when to say no. This is, I admit this especially because this is something I myself have struggled with my entire life, because it's my natural inclination to bend over backwards for other people, and to let them walk all over me, and that has actually caused me some very, very serious problems in my life. There do need to be boundaries, and you need to know when to back up your words with iron. That has to be a thing. most people will be cool, but not everyone will. Every now and again, you need to ban 2 people from your Discord this morning. Yeah, this is recently on my mind as a result of this, by the way. Because it's true. Every now and again, you need to stop being weak about it. Stop saying, oh, well, you know, and just put your foot down. So, even when you don't want to. So, that sucks. And yeah, exactly, Trathan. I agree with that completely. Now, we'll come back to that in just a minute, because there's actually relevance here. But she decides, no. Huthor and Formosan Savicom. Both of them were on their last warning for violating the polemic concept, and not just discussing polemic topics, but also being assholes. And that is not acceptable, and I especially take ownership onto this myself, because I have let both of them get away with it for entirely too long, so... Anyways, so they have this thing where they show the cake, which actually looks pretty cool, and then Mudbriar shows up, who needs to die in a fire. Now, Huthor is not a regular on the stream. Huthor shows up very infrequently. He is still welcome on the stream. I actually talked to him privately afterwards. Formosan, I don't think has ever watched my show. I could be wrong about that. Yeah, Mudbriar, God, I just want to strangle him. But let's move past Mudbriar for just a second. They start the party, everything's cool. And then, yeah, I will admit Mudbriar is not as bad in this episode as the previous one, and I do want to talk about that. If you remember, I was so vitriolically hateful of him in this previous episode. And part of the reason was the episode was on his side. He was in the right. He was being presented as being the correct view, and everybody who was going against him, like Pinky, for example, was portrayed in a negative light, as if it was her fault that he was a dick. And that was one of my biggest complaints about that. Here, he is better. He's still irritating. I'm not going to say that I suddenly love him and want to give him huggles, but he is substantially better. And I do want to acknowledge that. Anyways, so the brother shows up. Oh my god, Silverstream is missing. I love Trixie's reaction. She's just like, ugh, starts eating the cake, or whatever she's eating. Real talk for just a second. This is an actual issue. A student missing who hasn't informed anyone, that is a huge frickety deal. I like how they bother to make this seem as big of a deal as it is. And Amber Alert. It's actually a real-life concept for that. It's called an Amber Alert. It's a, we have a kid missing alert. Just about everyone I know knows exactly what that means and how to respond to and deal with it. It's a big deal. I like how they approach it that way. But I do also kind of want to brutally murder Silverstream's brother. Now you're probably thinking, Lore, why? Well, Starlight admits that she turned away Silverstream earlier. He then turns to her and says, what kind of counselor turns away a student with a problem? I hate that. I hate that so goddamn much. That is accusation from ignorance, is what that is. Now, in his case, I'm going to give him a little bit of leeway because he's scared. Sure. So I'm not actually going to brutally murder him. But people who pull this crap in real life, I would love to just walk up to and punch as hard as I can. I get this crap as recently as about 2 days ago on my show with people who are completely ignorant of how much work and time and effort I put into my show, and insist that I am things such as being lazy, or not doing my due diligence, or not caring about things, or that I'm unprofessional. I love this kind of accusation, because I've gotten this for years. Now, Trixie does jump in immediately, but I had to pause and comment on that, because they had to bother to put that line in there, and screw that. I have nothing kind to say about that. Moving on. So then Mudbriar shows up. by which I mean he's a dick. But it's okay, because he's A, called out on it, and this is important, B, he actually looks properly humbled. Like, you caught that, right? Everyone just turns to glare at him, and his response is, it's not that bit important. Like, he's actually, there's a bit of contriteness there. This is just me showing work on and evidence with regards to what I was talking about earlier, because, yeah. Yeah, I imagine Maud was like, alright, listen, you're hot and all, but dial it down a few thousand notches. Technically, nope. So, they start warping around, trying to solve everything, trying to do everything. That's cool. They don't find her, but they do find notes that she was doing a cockatrice thing. So, okay. And then they warp out, and they stumble into the rest of the party. I have to point this out because it's my job. This is a horrifically huge coincidence. The fact that they happened to warp out to the spot that the other group happened to be running in on is actually a huge coincidence, since it would make substantially more sense if they were just going to warp straight to the forest. But instead they warp into the path of the other party. Just commenting on it, moving on. So anyways, coincidence aside, then there's a scene that I'm not actually making this up, actually made me laugh out loud, and I had to pause the episode for just a second. We could still have a party. A search party. I'm sorry, that got me. That got me. I love pointing out little details with regards to this show. Any show, really. Any game, anything I cover. There's this one bit, I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit here. That's true, Darth Medora. There's this one little bit where Starlight reveals that Silver Stream has gone into the woods alone. What happens is they're like, and there's this big gasp, right? Maud normally has her eyelids at half-mast, right? But her eyelids go up and then go back to down. No other reaction whatsoever. I love those kind of little details. As I've actually pointed out before, when Maud is both written and animated properly, you can actually tell. You can actually see the nuance in her performance that is hinted at in the narrative. And you can see, she doesn't express herself as much or as other people do, but she does express herself. This is a good example of that, and I just wanted to point it out because it's a neat little touch, and I love it. I love those little details. So then they run out. They go into the forest. I say, okay, we've got to find this thing. Find. Trixie has no idea what she's doing, of course. Was this a Haber episode? I didn't actually have time to look it up. And by time, I mean awareness of brain. Hang on. Here we go. Double check. It is Haber. What do you know? Where are you, Haber? Haber. There we go. And yeah, she tries to invoke a trope. Go figure. Student Counsel. There we go. I was actually kind of hoping it would work, to be completely honest with you. That would have amused me, but whatever. Either way, I want to rewind a second, because one of the things this episode doesn't really focus on is something that is actually a fairly important and complex topic. It is the boy who cried wolf. This is why Silverstream is the crying boy. Let me explain this a little bit on the off chance I'm explaining this badly, which is very likely because I am barely conscious right now. Let's say that you have a helpline, and you can call this helpline for issues with World of Warcraft. Now, there's no barrier to that. You can just call in. Now, the purpose of this helpline is if you have a problem. But you can see how this can be abused. It is abused, it has been abused, which leads to an inordinate amount of, let's call it what it is, junk. It's just pestering at a certain point. And so the people on the other line are like, hey, yeah, I'm here to deal with real issues. Now, that's not what they say. What they do, what most people do with regards to these situations, is they just kind of get dulled to it. They expect the junk. They expect the mundane. Have you ever called tech support for something? Anything, ever? Because I would bet money that you have experienced this on the reverse end. You've experienced someone who is so used to someone calling in for junk reasons. Someone who is crying wolf. that they don't treat your issue like it's real or serious, and they run you through some basic things, and the reason those things exist, ideally, is to prevent junk from filtering forward to people who actually can deal with it. Back when I worked tech support, we actually had a job called Tier 0. Tier 0 exists to filter out the junk. And I mean this in no way as an insult, but every single person in chat right now could work Tier 0 regardless of your IT knowledge or expertise. Because Tier 0's only job is to be the net, to catch all that junk, and if there's a real issue, any kind of real issue, they escalate it up to Tier 1. And that's when an actual tech gets involved, right? If you have a real issue, a Tier 0, anybody, really, with a functional brain, can figure out whether or not it's a real issue, or whether it's junk, and they filter through it, and only the real things get forward. It's an extremely valuable thing, by the way. I firmly believe in the concept of the Tier 0 thing. Some people thought it was an insulting position, but it's absolutely not. They have to deal with a lot of crap. They're on the phone basically constantly because of the volume of calls coming in. They deal with more calls than anybody else, right? And that is invaluable because you only want the actual tech people, of whom there's only so many, like 12 total, to deal with actual tech issues, right? You can see why this is so relevant to this situation, and it's so relevant to what they're talking about. If you allow anybody to ping for any reason, it just kind of gets filtered out. And you tend to not notice when it's a real issue. If Bragan was here, I was going to mention, anybody who's worked in dispatch knows exactly what this feels like. Or on a 911 line. Right? No, absolutely not, Act. The company I worked at would usually employ kids who would accept minimum wage for Tier 0s, which is not what I would do if I was in charge of that. But that's a whole other topic I don't want to get into right now. So, yeah. This Silverstream obviously was trying to figure out something and yada yada yada, but the harsh reality is what Silverstream was doing was junk. Pay attention to what else happened. So let's cover two specifically. One of the things is Ember and Griffin. Oh, God, I can't do names right now. Are upset because she burned his book. That's something close to a real issue. That's an actual Smolder. Thank you. That's something close to an actual real issue that she actually does need to deal with. Okay. Let's look at what Ocellus was talking about. Identity issues. I don't think I even need to explain that one, do I? And I point this out because even before the whole I'm lost in the woods problem, which is also a real problem, those two, amongst the junk of Silverstream, emphasizes exactly what I'm talking about. Without that filter, you just kind of have to deal with everything. And there's problems with that. And this is exactly why. So this is the biggest. Yeah, no kidding, Trayton. This is the biggest reason why that kind of a filter is so useful, and why it is such an unfortunate reality that people abuse these kind of situations. Because the boy who cries wolf, the reason I call it that specifically, is the whole point of that parable is if you pull the same lie over and over, but then something real happens, nobody believes you anymore. So if you call in with a junk issue over and over, or if you go to your counselor with a junk issue over and over, but then you have a real issue, guess what they're going to assume that real issue is? And that's exactly what happened. Sorry for talking about this so long, but it's a topic that really caught my attention, and I really honestly wish the episode would do a little bit more of, Oh, haha, Rascor. I mean, you're right, Lord Ermine. It's absolutely not the point of the episode. The point of the episode is to do proper time management, which we've honestly already covered. It's just... Anyways. So then the episode, honestly, kind of turns into a Scooby-Doo episode, and honestly, not for the better. I have, like, a grand total of 3 sentences for the entire rest of the episode. And there's a bunch of cockatrices. They rush off to, the treehouse. Yeah, zoinks happens. She went to, work, and lost track of time. Mudbriar's... Maud is actually pretty amusing, swooning over Mudbriar. Yeah, they don't really resolve the issue, it's just kind of whatever. The episode ends on a wah-wah. But I do want to comment on one last thing. Just the one. Let me add to the wah-wah counter really quick. While we're here. I didn't think you could get any hotter. Look, Maud, I'm not here to judge. Wait, actually, that's literally my job. I judge thee. There's another thing that the episode brings up, which is absolutely not the topic of the episode. So, to go back to Lord Harriman's thing, this episode briefly mentions two fascinating topics and then doesn't do anything with either of them. We already talked about the first one, the boy who cried wolf, the junk filter. The second thing is a form of pendulum effect. Historically speaking, an inordinate amount of problems in human society could be boiled down to, let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. Let's go as far away from it as possible and do the exact opposite. This is actually related to the we tried something once, therefore it doesn't work, therefore we're abandoning it forever concept, but let's ignore that. I bring this up because, specifically, Starlight, I can't even think of Starlight's name. Starlight says, I am never taking time off from my duties again. Now, this is why I bring that up. Yeah, France is actually a perfect example of this, historically speaking. Let's do this. Nope. And then we have the, wow, I can't even think of the name of it. The bloody, the terror? The reign of terror. There it is, the reign of terror. Which we had during the French Revolution, which was just awful. The Great Terror. And then France. But anyways, moving on. Point here being that her response is exactly why people tend to do that. It is understandable. Because what tends to happen is something bad or really bad happens because of how you were doing things, or how you did manage things, or how things failed, right? And so you really don't want that to happen again. And so you go way opposite to try and do everything in your power. How many times have you seen this in fiction? Let's keep this in fictional realm for a second. How many times have you seen in fiction where a parent lost a child, and so they become severely overprotective of the surviving one, and it actually ends up damaging the relationship? Or how many times have you seen a thing where a specific commander lost someone during a bad call they made during a battle and loses all confidence in their ability to lead, and so they go way the opposite direction and basically stop making command calls in general? And you get the idea here, right? Yeah, actually, you know what? Let's use a Star Trek example. Because of the eugenics wars, all gene alterations, all genetic mutation and augmentation was considered immediately banned across the whole of the Federation. Think about that for a second. So again, we could talk about this in real life terms, but keeping it within the realm of the fictional, this is a very common thing. And it's understandable. The problem is it's almost always wrong. Going to the opposite extreme doesn't really solve the problem. It just creates new problems. And that is, ironically, and I'm not just bringing this up to talk about a topic, but also to talk about this specific episode. Because the point of this episode, the real point, the actual point the episode is making is balance, that you have to carefully and precisely manage your time and spend time here and here and here accordingly. That way you don't lose time, that way you don't lose track, that way you don't lose promises, that way you're not flustered, yada yada yada, right? And that is exactly the same reaction to this kind of extreme reaction, is you should have a balanced approach. One moment, please. Why didn't that mute? God damn it. Excuse me. Oh, that hurt. But you get my point, right? And it's a good message. So, yeah, there's have business hours. See, so let me bring the last thing. Sorry, I meant to bring this up earlier. She has a pager. I'm not going to name names, but I knew someone once who was a nurse who had a pager for emergencies. This is obviously a while ago. That pager was for emergencies. Now, that's a good thing. That's a good system to have. When an emergency happens, you want someone to have access to you. But you see the problem that's already been built up by the very existence of that access. The moment people can come to your door and knock on it to get your attention, people do that, whether it's an emergency or not. She ended up getting rid of that pager, and I do mean actually getting rid of it. This did cause issues. Again, I'm not going to go into specifics. People died. Now, during this, her boss tried to come after her for this. She fought back against this and made pretty much all the same points I am making to you. She was successful in making her point, and, well, the end result was they decided to not give her a pager going forwards, because they, at the time, with the tech they had, couldn't think of a filter to prevent the junk. So if they had an emergency, well, that sucks. Anyways, I just wanted to end the episode on that positive note. So now I gotta rate the episode. I'm thinking blue, because Mudbrier's in it. Oh, actually, I do want to comment. Can they frickin' hire some new faculty at this frickin' school? I know, in real life, schools are understaffed. But this is MLP, and they're supposed to be better than real life. Get them some frickin' staff! Anyway, sorry. God. This is not the first time I brought this up, too. That's true. We could go up from blue. So it's blue because Mudbrier's in it. But we'll push it up to green because Mod's in it. Because that's how we review episodes. In all in total honesty, even though the episode bumbles hard towards the end, I think that just prevents it from being read. And that's my honest thoughts on that. It doesn't really spend time or effort on any of its messages. Even its core actual message, which is manage your time properly, is barely given any real screen time. They show the problem, and then in the last 20 seconds they mention the solution, and that's kind of it. Everyone just kind of wah-wahs, and there's just Scooby-Dooing at the end, and it really does fall apart. But the early parts of the episode are very strong, and have some good character moments, and some good background development, and blah, 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 blah. So, I'm going to agree with the consensus here. I think this is an orange. Listen, setting boundaries with teenagers is impossible. Without a gun. There we go. Boundary set. We here at the Lore Walkers advocate shooting... I shouldn't say that. That's actually horrible. Don't shoot people. There we go. That's what we advocate. Don't shoot people. Next episode we're covering. Well, Frostmourne's more of a deterrent, right? You pull out Frostmourne and people are like, hey... Rainbow Road Trip, huh? Anything like that would have to be separately funded. So, because it's time, I charge by the hour. And anytime we add something to an existing run, which I know Streaminations don't really seem like runs, but they are. In every way that matters, a Streamination is a run. So anything added onto it means it costs more. And since we're already in the middle of it, that means money has to fund for that. And that's just going to be my answer to that, and we're moving on. So what are we covering next? Episode 12, The Last Crusade. That's what we're covering. So give me a moment to shuffle a few more things over, and I'll be back in about 25 minutes.